The source of the government's authority is the consent of the governed. This means that the government is not the ruler, but the servant or agent of the citizens. It means that the government has no rights except for the rights delegated to it by the citizens for a specific purpose. And that quote comes from Ayn Rand. Welcome to Surviving the Matrix, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Maxwell Igan. It's a pleasure to be with you once again, and I will be your host for the next hour. Well, folks, a few weeks ago I told you that you need to buckle your seatbelts because we are going to be in for a hell of a ride in 2012. And that statement has most certainly proven to be true so far. We've seen an incredible escalation in the control grid so far this year. And of course, what comes along with this escalation in the control grid is also an escalation in the opportunities that mankind is being presented with to effect positive change. The question is, when are the people going to seize these opportunities and bring this change about? Now, one of the most unique opportunities we've ever been presented with actually has just come to pass through a new bill that President Barack Obama has signed off on, which is, of course, Bill H.R. 347. And this bill effectively makes free speech in America a felony. It imposes guidelines which will imprison anybody for 1 year should they choose to speak out at any political rally or cause any type of disturbance anywhere where a politician may be and where the Secret Service have been deployed to ensure that they are protected. So, folks, what this means is that anywhere that the Secret Service happens to be, if you create any type of disturbance within that area, then you will be subject to 1 year imprisonment. And, folks, this is all political rallies because, the Secret Service is always there to protect the president. They're always there to protect many politicians. And, in fact, anybody who the politicians decided they will use the Secret Service to protect, should you cause any type of disturbance at all and merely speak out against them, offer opposition at a political rally or anything like that, then you'll be subject to 1 year in jail. And folks, this is an incredible opportunity, and it's almost a gift in a way, because this legislation, once the people of America become aware of it, should serve to mobilize the entire country. That is, if anybody in the country is still able to think. But it should cause everybody to want to stand up right now. We need 10 million people to march to Washington, folks. There was a couple of years ago, we were talking about the Million Man March. Well, that actually happened. And it was more than 1 million men. It was actually 2 million people marched on the Capitol. I think it was either late 2009 or 2010. And the event was not even reported by the media. That's how much it was repressed. But it did actually take place. So all we need is a 10 million man march, or perhaps even 100 million man march, because the police cannot arrest everybody. And it needs to be made very clear to the people that anybody who supports this bill is an enemy of the United States and an enemy of freedom and democracy. And it should also be very well noted that President Obama and every politician who signed off on this bill have now openly declared themselves as traitors to their nation and the type of domestic enemy that the Constitution of the United States warns the people to be vigilant for. Because America was founded on freedom of speech. If there is no freedom of speech, there is no America. And I've been saying for quite a long time that the America that we know and love has long since gone by the wayside and simply doesn't exist anymore. And this bill, H.R. 347, is the final nail in the coffin of the rights of the American people. And so even those people who have never seen that there's a problem and have remained totally asleep and totally locked within the matrix should now be able to realize that their country has been stolen from them by the domestic enemies that they currently have employed within the government system. Because this bill removes from the American people the last vestige of anything that symbolizes the true spirit of America. It's now gone, folks. It's now been completely stolen by those politicians that the people of the country have elected and employed to protect them and to serve their best interests. And folks, it should be abundantly clear with the introduction of this bill that they are doing nothing of the sort, and in fact, they are doing quite the opposite. And so what can the people do about this? What can you as an individual do about this bill? Sure, a 10 million man march or a 100 million man march to Washington may achieve something, but before you can do anything like that, you have to get the information out to people in as clear and concise a way as possible, which means you have to connect with them and you have to befriend them and you have to present things to them in a positive way and help them become aware of the need for them to participate in the world around them. And of course, what you need to do in order to achieve that is you need to break down the barriers in your community so that you are able to connect with the community around you. I keep coming back to this, don't I? But folks, if people cannot now see the importance of having a strong community that is able to stand up against this type of corrupt legislation, then I don't know what's going to make them see that this is the answer. I mean, what are you going to do? Grab guns and wage a war against the government? Well, good luck with that, folks, because they've got better weapons. They understand that. When you get violent with them, they understand it perfectly and they know exactly how to respond. In fact, they want you to get violent because the more violent you get, then the more repression they are able to force upon you. Well, what they fear the most out of everything is a community that is strong and fearless. And you only get that if you break down the barriers that you have with your neighbours. If you break down the barriers in your community, stop judging each other. Stop following your particular trend. You know, you're this, you're that, you're rich or you're poor, or you're a businessman, or you're a dropout, or you're a stoner, or you're a goth, or you're a gay, or you're a biker, or you're a surfer, or you're this, or you're that. Why can't you all just be people? Why can't you all just be a communal spirit, each one of which is observing reality from a different perspective? And why can't you simply realise that the governments are people that you employ to protect you, to manage your infrastructure? And you're never going to achieve anything while you remain divided. All you will do is remain divided and you will eventually be conquered, because that's the method. And the fact is that humanity has their freedom right there in the palm of their hand. But they remain divided or they remain in denial, and so that freedom continues to slip through their fingers when it's right there. All you have to do is close your hand around it. You get the New Age people, the more negative it gets, the more they go into denial. They lock themselves in a room and go, love and light, love and light, love and light, love and light. And the whole world just turns to hell around them because they're in a complete state of fear, which they've clearly demonstrated by locking themselves away and not seeing the opportunities that are being presented to them. And this is the year, folks. This is the year of opportunity. So we need to seize these opportunities. Now, the biggest problem we've got in all this, of course, is the police. But again, the police can't function against an empowered community. I mean, really, when you see bills like this, you've got to really wonder at the mentality of the police, though. I mean, why haven't the police actually gone and arrested the politicians who enacted this legislation? That's the question that people should be asking themselves. And the reason they haven't gone and arrested these people, folks, is because they're all brainwashed. They all believe that because it says it on this piece of paper, that they have to do it. And a lot of them are kids that have been brutalised and people that have had pretty rugged lives up to that point who have a chip on their shoulder, which is why they usually get a job in the police force anyway. And you give them this type of power and they just want to use it. They just want to go out and hurt people because they have this chip on their shoulder because of the life that they've been subject to. And of course, you've got to understand these people. I mean, this is what they're like because this is the way they've been trained to be. That's why they create these societies where you have kids that grow up to be brutalised and grow up with the chip on their shoulder. You get these big, strong kids that really have a bad view of people and a bad view of the world, and so you go and befriend them and you offer them a job controlling other people, and they jump at the chance. So again, folks, you've got to be able to look at this and you've got to see that the perspective these kids have is valid because that's the way they grew up, and that's what they're trained to do, and they're probably doing it quite well. They're probably very successful at what they've been trained to do. The problem is that what they've been trained to do is to behave like a psychopath. due to the psychopathic nature of the society in which they were trained. I mean, it's pretty understandable. This is the way they're going to turn out, folks. It's a psychopathic society, and it's a psychopathic system that trains these people who have been basically brought up to be psychopathic and sociopathic. That's the whole structure of our society. It's designed to create people such as this. I mean, have a look at it. If you just step back and look at it, and it becomes incredibly obvious that this is why society functions the way it does, and why it's allowed to continue functioning the way it does. I mean, we could fix all these problems, folks. The only thing that ever stops us is legislation. Might be a bit of a clue there in that fact, folks. And so what the community needs to do in the face of all this sort of stuff is build itself up as strong so that you can stand against these people peacefully. You can simply talk to them. I mean, if there's 10,000 empowered people there and not a mindless rabble, not something like we saw with the Occupy movement, which was all very well, but it was still a mindless rabble because it had no real direction, no real cohesiveness. The people knew they wanted change, but they didn't know what that change was. And so you had all these different factions come in and say, well, it's this change. Here's socialism. Or it's this change. Here's communism. Or it's this change. Here's a movement to save the whales. You know, it was all these little tiny movements and all these things all attempting to vie for supremacy, because if they could get that supremacy, then they would have the attention of the rabble and they may be able to further their own agenda. And really, folks, when you look at what actually came out of the Occupy movement, all that really came out of it was the introduction of something like Bill HR 347. And then you look at who provided a lot of the financial backing for the Occupy movement, and you've got to wonder if this was not the agenda to begin with. So yeah, you need to have something like the Occupy movement, but really, folks, what the agenda of the rabble should be is to stop it being a rabble, to make it an empowered community. And you do this by seeing each other as valid, realizing that we are all facing exactly the same situation. It doesn't matter whether it's the water table, the fracking, it doesn't matter whether it's the pollution that's happening to our oceans through Fukushima. It doesn't matter if it's censorship and a loss of freedom of speech. And it's very interesting to see this censorship and loss of freedom of speech happening exactly at the time when things such as I previously mentioned are occurring to the planet. All these things are, of course, supported by politicians. I mean, what are the politicians doing about Fukushima? Absolutely nothing. What are they doing about the fracking? They're supporting it. They're supporting it, folks. They're saying it's good for the country. And they're saying this because they believe that what is good for the country is what is good for the economy, because it is the people who are in control of the economy who run the country, the people who issue the money. Eventually, all roads lead to them. And as I've said before, folks, these people will continue to strip mine and degrade this planet until it looks like the moon. And then they'll still be sitting there thinking, my God, we're going to have to find another planet somewhere in the universe to exploit because I still have a bill to the bank that I need to pay. Because a lot of the people within the system, they actually believe that this system is real. They actually believe that the economy is important. They believe that the function of humanity is to operate in a state of permanent economic and corporate growth. They actually believe this, folks. You see, not all of the politicians, not all the people in there are bad people. They're just incredibly misinformed as to the true nature of reality. They all have incredibly left-brained understandings of the world because of their left-brain education, and this is what has enabled them to climb that far on the political ladder. And, of course, they are forced to operate within the parameters of what is essentially a psychopathic system. So again, it's not about directing blame at people. It's about realizing what the solutions to all of these problems are. To realize that the system is psychopathic, to know that it's there, and to step away from it. And the only way that humanity can step away from it is if they can depend on each other and put the common unity back into community. And saying this has never been more timely, folks, because it has never been more imperative that mankind put these barriers down and connect with each other and put this common unity back into their community. Now is the time, folks. 2012 was always supposed to be a time of enlightenment, but people have to see what that enlightenment is. It's not sitting down waiting to ascend while the world turns to hell around you. It's realizing the opportunities you're being presented with for a unity of humankind. And it's about being part of the realization of that unity.